طلبة الأعزاء، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم في محاضرة جديدة في كورس Introduction to Literature، مقدمة في الأدب، والتي سنتناول بها هذا اليوم أنواع الدراما الكوميدي and tragedy، الكوميديا والتراجيدي. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will discuss the types of drama. Actually, we have two main types of drama. We have the comedy and the tragedy. And each one of them, it has subcategories inside each type. So let us discuss each type in detail in the next slide, please. So the first one is comedy. So what is comedy? Comedy is a dramatic work in which the central motive is the triumph over adverse circumstance, resulting in a successful or happy conclusion. So in this type, the dramatic work, the play, it has certain motive, which is the triumph that we have. Just the heroes, the characters, and those characters will just strive for their life, and then at the end they have happy ending. So the comedy, it is the play that ends with happy ending. And we have many types of comedy inside. So we have actually 6 types of comedy. First type is romantic comedy, and number 2, satiric comedy, number 3, comedy of manners, number 4, farce, and number 5, comedy of humors, and number 6, melodrama. So we will examine each one, or we'll study each one of them in detail with an example of them from the famous plays. So let's start. So the first type is dramatic comedy. The first type is romantic comedy. And from its name, we can know that this type of comedy concerned with a pair of lovers and their struggle to come together, which is usually the center of the romantic comedy. And romantic comedies also involve some extraordinary circumstances, for example, magic, dreams, and the fairy world. So here, the main story of this type is that two lovers just fighting for each other, and then they end with a happy ending. Mostly is the marriage. Example of this type of comedy is Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night Dream and As You Like It. So these two plays, they are types of this kind, or this type of comedy. Number 2 is the satiric comedy. The satiric comedy, الكوميديا الناقدة. Satiric comedy has a critical purpose. It usually attacks philosophical notions or political practices, as well as general deviations from social norms by ridiculing characters. In other words, the aim is not to make people laugh with, but the characters, but laugh at them. And examples of this type of comedy is Ben Jonson's Valpone and The Alchemist. Number three, the comedy of manners. A comedy of manners is a play concerned with satirizing society's manners. So here the focus is different. It's satirical, yes, in its outlook shape, but it is satirizing the society manners, not satirizing something else. A manner is defined as the method in which everyday duties are performed, conditions of society, or a way of speaking. It implies a polite and well-bred behavior. The comedy of manners is also satirical in its outlook, and it takes the artificial and sophisticated behavior of the higher social classes under close scrutiny. Example of this type of comedy is Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. Number four is farce. Farce is a type of comedy that uses absurd and highly improbable events in the plot. Situations are humorous in this kind of play because of their comic and often ridiculous nature. The choice of setting is a key factor in farce, as the protagonist is sometimes at odds with the environment. Often, the central character in a farce does not or should not belong in the place of the action. Example of this type is Shakespeare's The Taming of Shrew, ترويض النمرة. Okay. آه، وهذه المسرحية تتحدث عن آه، فتاة غير مطيعة لوالدها وتكون شرسة، ووالدها لذلك يعرض مكافأة كبيرة إلى كل شخص يستطيع ترويضها والزواج منها. This is so this a kind of uh, example for such for the farce. One of the most famous examples, actually. Number five, comedy of humors. It is a comedy developed by the writer Ben Jonson, which is based on the assumption that a person's character or temperament is determined by the predominance of one of four humors. Body liquids, for example, blood, sanguine. So, phlegm, phlegmatic, yellow bile, choleric, a black bile, melancholic. So, in the comedy of humors, characters are marked by one of these predispositions, which cause their eccentricity or distorted personality. An example of this type is Ben Jonson, Every Man in His Humor. Number six, melodrama. And from its name, it consists of two words, the word melody, song, and drama. Melodrama is a type of stage play which, which became popular in the 19th century. It mixes romantic or sensational plots with the musical elements. Later, the musical elements were no longer considered essential. Melodrama aims at a violent appeal to the audience emotions and usually has a happy ending. Example of this is Noel Coward's Still Life Brief Encounter. These are the types of the comedy. And now we will study the second main type, which is tragedy. So, what is tragedy? Tragedy is a type of drama in which the characters experience a reversal of fortune, usually for the worse. In the tragedy, suffering awaits many of the characters, especially the hero. So, so when we studied comedy, we said that comedy ends with happy ending, but in a tragedy, it ends with sad ending, unfortunately. And again, we have types of tragedy. So we have four types. The first type is Seneca tragedy, and the second type is revenge tragedy, and number three, domestic tragedy, and number four, tragic comedy. These are the main types of tragedy, and which we will study in detail in the next slides. Let's start with the first one, Seneca tragedy. Let us see why it's called so. This type of tragedy is related with the Roman poet Seneca, born 4 BC, died 65 AD. His tragedies were recited rather than staged, but they became a model for the English playwrights, entailing the five acts structure, complex plot, and an elevated style of language. Number two, revenge tragedy. The revenge tragedy is a popular genre of the Elizabethan and Jacobean stage in which the main character seeks revenge on the murder of a relative or friend. And the action was often perpetrated by a boss returning to a decent or friend who promises to exact retribution. The genre usually combined violence and sensational action with intense mediations on the morality of revenge. A very important and famous example of this type of tragedy is William Shakespeare's Hamlet. So, as we see here in the cover, that they are just they have written what the tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Death. So it's tragedy. Number three, domestic tragedy. Domestic tragedy. It is a kind of tragedy in which the leading characters belong to the middle class rather than to the royal or noble ranks, usually represented in a tragic drama, and in which the action concerns family affairs rather than public matters or of states like what we have here, what in Senecan tragedy or in revenge tragedy. So here, the characters they belong to the middle class, and this type concerns with the family affairs, not uh, other public or state matters or affairs. Example of this type is Arthur Miller's play The Death of a Salesman, موت بائع متجول. And this play, is studied by fourth year students in our department. Tragic comedy. Number four. Tragic comedy is a literary device used in a fictional works. It contains both tragedy and comedy. Mostly, the characters in tragic comedy are exaggerated, and sometimes there might be a happy ending after a series of unfortunate events. It is incorporated with the jokes throughout the story, just to lighten the tone. Thus, characters of both high and low social rank can be mixed, as in Shakespeare Merchant of Venice, which is a very famous example of this type of tragedy. So here, in this type of tragedy, we have mixed of characters. We have characters belong to the high class and characters belong to the low class. So, our lecture for today is finished. Thank you very much indeed for listening, and see you next lectures. Thank you again, and see you.